suddenly overnight, everyone's an AI expert. Over the last 5 years, we've seen people rebrand themselves as digital, and now they're AI. And so there's a lot of projection of authority and knowledge, but not necessarily a lot of depth and vulnerability about what this really means and how we're going to navigate it. So I think like leveling out that authenticity, but then also holding ourselves to account to fill those gaps, navigate the unknown, is part of my brand, and it's part of the followership that I try to engender and empower in the people I work with, whether it be a client or my direct team or the teams that I need to influence.
Welcome to the Trailblazers podcast presented by BST Global, where we feature the visionaries who are helping to shape the AEC industry of the future. My name is Javier Baldor, Chief Executive Officer at BST Global and your host. Today I'm joined by Darren Martin, Chief Digital Officer at Atkins Realis. Darren, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Javier. It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Atkins Realis, global firm, but in your own words, tell us about Atkins Realis and introduce yourself as well, please.
Yeah, sure. So Atkins Realis is a global engineering and consulting organization. It has revenues just over $10 billion. It represents in over 60 countries globally, and its mission is really focused on engineering a better future for the planet and its people. So that's what attracted me to the role. I took the role 6 months ago. So we're just coming up to my 6-month anniversary. And
fresh then.
Yeah, fresh from it. Yeah, and just spending a lot of time really engaging with clients, engaging on our mission, understanding the impact that AI will have on our industry, on our clients, and making sure we're tuned in to helping our clients be as successful as possible.
So I did a little bit of homework leading up to this segment. Tell us about your personal journey. It's fascinating. I want you to share it with our audience.
Yeah, well, I guess from my perspective, I'd come at this from a completely different angle to most people, in the sense that I originally trained as a clinical psychologist and was used to dealing with large groups of people, helping them overcome different challenges. And I didn't take the usual Freudian route where, it was a long one-to-one conversation about, Javier, tell me about your mother and your father experiences, but more interested in cognitive behavioral therapy and neurolinguistic programming. And then working with groups of patients, sometimes up to groups of 20, and empowering them to overcome problems and issues. And I found that at the same time, there was a big surge in technology. And I decided, along with a friend of mine, that we would start up a technology company for a short period of time. It was a detour from my life plan. I was really empowered and passionate about what I was doing. But I basically stepped away and got involved in a startup and got the bug for moving, I guess, from dealing with complex people with complex issues to dealing with complex organizations, and in some ways complex markets, and how do we kind of help people work together to overcome those challenges. So that's kind of my origin story.
That's cool. Very, very interesting, and really talk about that passion, that personal passion, and to work on very important issues with, I would imagine, individuals who are going through a difficult health situation, and then talk about that passion and how it threaded into where you are today in terms of complex organizations, global organizations. What is that thread that and the passion that you have that exhibited across those domains?
Yeah, so I guess for me, originally in my early career, a bad day at the office would involve, a client not surviving. We were dealing with clients that had severe emotional problems and mental health issues and so on. And literally a day for me could involve trying to talk a patient off a bridge. And that is a life-critical situation. And so you see the impact that you're having individually with an individual client or a broader set of clients up to 20. But as I said, in the past, by day I'm an empath, but by night I'm quite analytical, and so I process things, and so I spent a lot of my time really looking at the impact that we were having across a broad patient group to see where the value of the style of consultancy we were providing for our clients and the turnaround, like who was getting better, who wasn't, who was coming back for more treatment, who sadly didn't continue with treatment for tragic reasons, and then trying to understand that to improve the impact that was having on the customer base. And I've always kind of taken that approach to complex organizations, to have data-driven decisions, and really think about owning that outcome right through. I've seen so many failed projects. We talk about digital transformation and how difficult it is. But when I moved into the corporate environment, I didn't quite see the same level of ownership and accountability that was prevalent in the healthcare industry, where people really clearly are committed to helping to save lives. And so trying to take that passion and that impetus and accountability through to the way I empower my teams, and I lead clients through outcomes and deal with challenging situations with clients that perhaps they don't want to deal with themselves, taking that ethos into what's really an important issue in our industry at AEC right now in terms of helping the race towards net zero, minimizing the impact that we're currently having on the planet, and making best use of precious resources, whether that be financial resources or human capital resources, to turn around this really important situation. So taking that force through has been a differentiator for me, I think, in my career. And so far, the fellowship that I gain from the people I work with has meant that collectively we can drive really quite impactful results.
Awesome. Talk to me about that leadership, those tenets of influence. How do you navigate, differences of opinion, people who may not be ready for that level of change? What are those ingredients that you have found in your professional career that has helped you to be successful and ultimately the teams that you're managing be successful?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So I don't know if I've really codified it fully, but I think authenticity and transparency is really important. So understanding when the team or me individually is struggling and being open about that and conveying what needs to potentially happen from my direction and what I'm doing, or what I need differently from the team, or where I have gaps in the team and how I'm going to fill that. But being quite open about that. And in the past, I've seen people shield vulnerability. And as I lean into more and more dynamic change and the current tsunami of the AI impact that we're having on our industry, suddenly overnight, everyone's an AI expert. Over the last 5 years, we've seen people rebrand themselves as digital, and now they're AI. And so there's a lot of projection of authority and knowledge, but not necessarily a lot of depth and vulnerability about what this really means and how we're going to navigate it. So I think leveling out that authenticity, but then also holding ourselves to account to fill those gaps, navigate the unknown, is something that is part of my brand, and it's part of the fellowship that I try to engender and empower in the people I work with, whether it be a client or my direct team or the teams that I need to influence through, a 35,000 person organization and a really broad, complex supply chain that's associated with that.
Wow. Let's talk about that tsunami. How high is that tsunami? What is your personal take on AI and all its flavors? Certainly generative AI, machine learning, all the underlying and emerging technologies. How high is this wave, and what are the lasting impacts from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think it's if I dial back a little bit to say COVID, and the impact that COVID had on accelerating the digital transformation in organizations. At one stage, no one could go to work. We couldn't work globally. So suddenly all of the infrastructure that had been there for a long time suddenly was in the community consciousness. Everyone was aware of it. Everyone was accessing it. And so industry and society in general just transformed 10 years worth of slow transformation by impetus in about a year and a half. And I think like AI has been one of these slow burns. So it's been here for a long time. We've had robotics in manufacturing, for example, for a long time. But the collective consciousness and awareness that the generative aspects and the appeal that has to the community with open AI technologies such as ChatGPT, we're seeing now the Sora capability and DALL-E come through, and other variations. Not every type of AI is an open AI source, but those are the things that are having the biggest impact. And I think that is a really huge tsunami of consciousness. Now, the delta between the hype curve, as it's sometimes referred to, so the Gartner hype curve, we have the peak of expectations through to the trough of disillusionment, and then somewhere like the forecast real value that exists. We're definitely going to go through cycles of that, and that will be different for different industries.
So talk about where your focus is, at Atkins Realis as it relates to AI. What's the top priority for the and or planned investment, and why? What are you looking to focus upon and implement in your AI playbook?
Well, Javier, I think that one of the things that we've zeroed in on is that for us, AI should be a potential amplification of our core values. And so we've looked at our mission as a company and then looked to see where we are currently challenged in some ways by the amount of human capital or the pace of change that we currently have. And how can AI actually accelerate our mission? And as I said, we focus on engineering a better future for the planet and its people. So those things are really well aligned. And when I look at the impact humans are having on the planet at the moment and our ability to reverse the impact of global warming, I think humans alone are not succeeding fast enough with that problem. So it's an open opportunity to look at ways of accelerating the race to net zero. And for me, there are huge safety considerations that are associated with the use of AI, particularly some forms of generative AI, which for us means that as we embark on that journey, we want to ensure that there is human oversight throughout the process to safeguard it. We don't want to explicitly trust the process. But that's I would say the crux of where we are on this.
Very clear. Atkins Realis has a very strong focus on sustainability. As I look, from the sidelines, and you mentioned these global challenges, rightfully so, resourcing in our industry, climate change, poverty at a global scale, displacement of these are cost arbitrage centers in many cases, and what will the impact be to other countries that are currently serving our economy that may not serve as such going forward. So specifically, how do you feel the resourcing challenge may be met by AI, and what is the work you're doing on the sustainability front, or contemplating, I should say, with AI?
Yeah, so look, I think that as we look at the way work currently gets done, there are already skill shortages in the engineering, design, and construction work that the planet needs in order for us to refresh and renew some of the current infrastructure, to help the transition to urbanization that's taking place as a global phenomenon, and then to decarbonize our assets and accelerate our path towards decarboned energy provision. And there just aren't enough people that are qualified at the right level to make that work. So those are opportunity gaps that lend themselves to an amplification and acceleration through AI. Also, engineering construction and architectural organizations, AECs, are famous for hiring really, really smart people. But at the same time, we often get them doing quite tedious things. And an engineer's innate DNA often really enjoys recreating things. And there's a sense of not invented here. And I often kind of use the parody of Uber. If Uber was designed from within an AEC organization, there'd be a different Uber app for every airport. And you'd have to deal with different language issues, different downloads. And the opportunity for a single platform to be put out there, for the right investment and bold definition to be made there, and then the focus really being on about how do we sign up taxi drivers, private drivers, and so on, to get behind this service. So it has meaning in different regions, but it's a single interface. It's a usable entity. I think that the nature and the high intellect that exists within the AEC environment is also counterproductive to the idea of standardization, platform, product, acceleration. So looking more at platform, looking more at standardization, and consistency with robotic process automation at a simple entry level through to advanced AI, through to Gen AI. Those are the opportunities, but it's also challenging to bring that into a complex organization, a complex industry, a highly regulated industry. There's so much to be done. The industry itself by 2030 will be valued at 17.5 trillion. It has a productivity lag that falls way behind at the bottom of the league or close to the bottom of the league. I think agriculture has overtaken our industry. So the huge potential that lies ahead is important. And it's important for companies like Atkins Realis, who are global leaders, to really set the pace for this transformation.
I don't envy your position.
That's right.
Talk about the future of work and the worker of tomorrow and beyond. What does that look like from your lens? And you have tremendously talented professionals now at Atkins Realis. Everyone speaks to upskilling and those kinds of things. What does that journey look like? What are the skills of tomorrow, and how are you going to get that talented professional today to where they need to be tomorrow and beyond?
Yeah, look, I think there's a leadership responsibility for us to all be curious about the potential of AI. I think the fear of AI in terms of job preservation in our industry, I think, is less of a concern. I think the opportunity to do more interesting work, to do it faster, to have a more purposeful impact on the planet than we currently do, which is already significant, is the exciting part of this. And so at a leadership level, it's about stimulating curiosity. And I recently did some work with an associate professor at Oxford University. And I asked, we partnered together to do some leadership engagement in the industry. And he started his story with a problem with a light bulb in his kitchen that his better half was always complaining about, could never be fixed. And I expanded this story not as an AI expert, but as someone that was using AI to try and source the replacement light bulb. And the bulb had gone out of date, and the story just unfolded.
Very familiar. Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, exactly. This is a challenge that men and women face for at least since the invention of electricity. But there's definitely a story here where he went through the traditional methods of trying to source it. He even went to the janitor at Oxford University and asked him for his help. But when he retrospectively asked the AI technology to do this, he gave him the answer straight away. And he'd spent about 6 weeks of shoe leather, time, weekends, and he was not endearing himself any further with his wife at that point, right? And on retrospect, there were some things that he could have done up front that would have shaped and informed what he did next. And it was literally almost like a 5-click step where he could have sourced it and it could have been there by the weekend. And I think 6 weeks on, he got nowhere through traditional methods. And that's like, for me, that's a real leveling way of introducing this to leaders that might otherwise feel that they need to hold a position on this, but still may feel underinformed. There are other levels to this. And I think for me, it's also important that as an engineering company with proud intellectual heritage, we think about our relationship between taking solutions, shaping solutions, and making solutions. And in my experience, I've come from a technology background. I've been involved in creating software. I've worked for a $25 billion system integrator that would implement leading technology and made significant money from that. But in the engineering space, there can be a tendency to be the maker first and not necessarily understand how fast the private equity money, institutional money is coming into construction tech. I was lucky in that I spent quite a lot of time with McKinsey, working with them as a client, and then actually working for them as a senior external advisor. And I got to see construction tech challenges, owner-operator challenges, as well as private equity opportunities and AEC opportunities at a sort of broad level. And the space here in terms of the amount of money that's going in, there's like a $50 billion investment that's just come in the last 2 years into construction tech alone. And as an A&C, we have to ask ourselves, what's our relationship to enabling client success, rather than how do we compete with a construction tech company or a private equity fund that really wants to disrupt in this space? How do we accentuate success for our clients and continue to provide the intellect that's needed in the niche areas that have the biggest impact? And I think that's the sweet spot.
Excellent segue. Coming back to that tsunami, you have a 113-year storied history at Atkins Realis. How do you avoid being disrupted? And how is your business model, in your opinion, for Atkins Realis, for the industry at large, how is that going to change in this AI, tsunami that's before us?
Yeah, great question. I think one has to take a longer term view than just what's happening right now. We are working to a 5-year planning horizon on our AI strategy, and we expect market disruption. Some of it we want to absolutely lead in that disruption and take a demonstrative way forward in those areas. In other cases, we will continue to track and play and operate in those markets. And in other markets, we will look at either accelerating degrees of automation to preserve margin, and or at the right time step away from those activities as they become commoditized in a race to zero. So the impact of technology and the disruption on our market is something that will influence our shareholder value, the geographies that we play in, the markets that we operate in. It won't impact overnight, but to kind of dismiss the residual impact it will have based on today's maturity and adoption of the technology would be a short-sighted thing to do, given that the technology is moving so fast, albeit adoption is lagging. So we need to kind of understand what the full potential will be in a 5-year horizon and work towards that horizon. So I use that as an analogy to say tracking where the comet is going rather than trying to tag on to the trail of the comet. So getting that pace right is really important.
Interesting, because coming back to the business model, that you hear McKinsey say between 2030 and 2060, 50% of all work activities will be automated. At the surface level, stunning figure. Industries based on a time and materials, brains by the hour, race to the bottom. So there has to, as I hear you speak earlier in your sentiments to outcomes and I'm thinking value, and how do you reshape the offerings that you take to your customers, and that what does that look like? What does the that environment look like for success when you are balancing that shift, right? Where you have an established, as long as I've been in the industry over 3 decades, it's been this way, and now there's going to be a transition. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I cut my teeth on gain share deals during the global financial crisis around 2008. And at that point, there was, I was leading on a professional services capability into industry, and the clients just signed off, closed down all discretionary spend with consultancies. And so that moment, in order to make sure that the teams that were associated with me could still feed their families and pay their mortgage, it was important that we thought differently and responded differently. And I think we're at another kind of crisis moment at this point in our industry where there's going to be a need to accelerate the transformation, but also disrupt the current contracting model so that there's an opportunity of value for both parties. And where I have been involved in gain shares and those sort of things, they generally are very much focused on outcomes. When I've been really successful in a gain share, incidentally, the client then often wants to dial back to fixed price time materials, which from a business perspective and a predictability perspective is easier to maintain. So I think we've got to take a balance between sort of managing risk as an AEC and the impact it has on our share price and how we want to operate. And we will take informed, calculated decisions around risk. We're not going to do anything unnecessarily reckless. But there will be opportunity to do something purposefully with those commissioners of service that want to accelerate their outcome, not just measure time and reward time. And that's where the sweet spot is.
Oh, that's cool. We're going to fast forward now, maybe 5-10 years out. I've been sharing with many of the guests on this podcast. What's your view of what will this look like? Perhaps for Atkins Realis and for our industry. And what would you say is, that was expected, and wow, that was unexpected? What might those two doors lead us to in maybe over a 5 to 10 year horizon, looking back?
That's a great question, Javier. I think one of the primary focuses would be on using AI differently to keep people safer, taking people out of harm's way. That has to be a priority. And I'm always amazed at what some people are doing in different industrial situations and what that means in terms of health impacts and safety impacts and sometimes critical loss of life. And so I see that as a huge opportunity where we continue to build on some of the advancements that have been done in mining, for example, where we see closed-loop environments, which means that there are no humans involved, and we have autonomous and or remote-controlled mining facilities. BHP and Rio, for example, are standout examples in that industry. And looking at other situations where people are in harm's way, and how do we make that simpler and safer? I think there's work that needs to be done on the interoperability of people and autonomous machines. And how do we, I don't necessarily see in some of our complex building environments, we don't have a situation where we can have it entirely closed loop. So how do those two variables kind of interact, and how do we do that safely? I think the acceleration of construction. So how do we move towards modular, hyper-configuration, but modular, and automation of construction? We're a long way from that journey. So I see big steps being made through enablement in that path. And then obviously the race to net zero. As I mentioned before, we're not moving fast enough. Anything that can help us do that. So what do I think that looks like? I think water scarcity, the impact of water scarcity being reduced significantly in certain regions, the aversion of macroeconomic, socioeconomic, political plays around scarcity of water and other natural resources. I think the minimalization of that impact. I think the urbanization and acceleration of safe, sustainable urbanization is really important. And so those are the sort of things that I think are, the goals that motivated me, I guess, from my transition from looking after people to helping to enhance complex systems.
Well, those are very, very ambitious goals, and all the while solving, things that really can help humanity and make the world, a better place and change the world. So I wish you the best of luck with that, and certainly Atkins Realis. It's been, first of all, a pleasure and an honor to have you on our podcast, and looking forward to your presentation here at the AI Summit. You are a keynote presenter, keynote presenter for our event. So really super excited to have you with us, and wish you and Atkins Realis all the best.
Well, thank you, Javier, and it's a pleasure to be here, and appreciate you taking the time to ask me some tough questions.
Well, thank you all for joining us on this segment of the Trailblazers podcast. Until next time, take care.